Welcome back to Ever Boyfriend. This is Ida.
And I'm Chancellor. Welcome back, guys.
Well, evening, everyone. Today we have a special video. We have video niche designer, not niche versus designer, because there's no versus, just niche designer. How can we tell the difference? How do we classify or identify them? Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, guys.
So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna break down 3 for each. That was 5 on my hand. three things that we use to characterize niche versus designer, to kind of what kind of sticks out for us for both, to kind of help you identify what you're smelling when you go ahead and smell a fragrance. Like when you see a name, it's not about the name, it's not about the price tag per se. I would say the price tag kind of helps you to identify, but not necessarily. Expensive doesn't necessarily mean quality. So we'll go ahead and get into this now. This is just like a general overview of niche and designer. It's not saying that it applies to everything, so kind of use your own discretion, but you know, go ahead and use our advice to kind of be able to see what you're smelling when you go to the stores. So we'll say first for niche is niche scent and scent for designers. So we're gonna go with niche first. Niche is more complex, pleasant, yet unusual. So in the sense, we're saying that unusual means, okay, for designer, scent usually is clean, pleasant, non-complicated, straightforward, and may not be as unique. Now, what do I mean by those things? General notes people can identify, lemon and floral. So we break it down. For designer, I believe that on a day-to-day basis, we smell different scents in the products we use, right? So you have a face wash that may smell floral, it may smell like clean, but sometimes we can't really identify what we're smelling. It just smells like a clean scent. Or even like a Pine Sol or some kind of like cleaning product. It may have a lemon scent to it. You can identify that it's like a version or perfumey version of lemon. It doesn't smell as natural as lemon, but you can tell that's a lemon scent.
So it's kind of like a synthetic of lemon?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I would say designer does that very well. It's kind of like scents that we can identify. It may be an abstract way of identifying it, but you can kind of tell, I'm smelling lemon, I'm smelling flowers. I don't know what flowers I'm smelling, but they smell like flowers. I don't know what kind of citrus or fruit I'm smelling, but it smells like fruits. I would say it's kind of just like an overall pleasant scent where you're wearing it and you're like, I smell clean, I smell fresh, I showered, and I smell like something pleasant. I think that's what designer is to me. Whereas niche, on the other hand, is a little bit more complex. Sometimes you have to sit there and study the fragrances that you're smelling because you can't really identify what you're smelling. For example, sometimes niche will have fragrance notes in there that are like grass or sand. Things that we may not normally know the scent of, or maybe an abstract way of viewing things that we've seen before, been around before, but now there's a note in a fragrance. So it's kind of like, this gives me the impression of grass. It may be a little unusual to you. You have to kind of take your time to study and understand it because you need to associate that scent with something else to kind of understand what you're smelling. I hope that makes sense.
It does to me. Like because again, I'm a beginner, so the more we make videos, the more I'm just around more niche fragrances, the more I'm starting to get more nuance and more understanding of what goes into niche fragrances and what sets it apart from designer fragrances. But like she said, they can both be kind of intertwined. But the point of today's video is to help you to make more informed decisions of what fits best for you.
Right, absolutely. I would say with designer fragrances now, it's not saying one is better than the other, but I would say that most people like myself started out wearing designer fragrances, started out wearing body splashes.
Me too.
So what do we like about those things when we were kids growing up or teenagers and you first started wearing fragrances? We like that it just smelled generally good, right? We just want to smell clean and fresh.
Curve was mine. Curve was my training wheels fragrance.
I was Tommy girl. My mom hated that.
Oh my gosh.
My mom hated that scent. So my mom brought it for me for Christmas. I was like 12 or something, and then every time I wear it, she goes, I can't stand it. You know what it was? Because it was like this screechy, clean, musky scent, and it just smelled really good. My mom could not stand the scent because it was just a little hard on her nose. So that kind of just tells you, like, designer scents have come a long way. They do smell a little bit more leaning towards the natural side. They are competing with niche fragrances to some degree, I would say that. But I would say you can still really tell the difference between niche and designer. I would say designers just simply Your average person will smell you and think you smell good. You don't smell complicated. You're just an easy on the nose kind of person. Niche might be, you smell interesting. You may not get a straight up compliment, but you smell interesting. So niche is really for you. You're enjoying what you're smelling because maybe it reminds you of a location. It reminds you of a place you were at one time. It's not all niche fragrances. All niche fragrances aren't complicated and make you have to go through this hard time to identify what you're smelling. But for the most part, that's what I've experienced. So going on to the next one here. So niche designer, we have, where do you find them? So niche fragrances are a little harder to find usually. They tend to be in specialty stores or online. I would say unless you live in a very large city, you're not going to find it in your typical department store. Even more so in your typical department store, you're not going to find, like, for example, I moved here from New York. I'm a New Yorker, and you would find niche fragrances in the Bloomingdale's and Soho. You would find it at Saks Fifth Avenue and in specialty stores, but you would not find them just randomly in Macy's for the most part. It would, unless it's like 34th Street Macy's, but even then they don't have niche fragrances. They just tend to have a little bit more of special collections like Maison, Lancôme, and things like that. So that's the difference there too. Designer, you pretty much will find anywhere. You can even find them in discount stores like TJ Maxx and Marshalls. You can find them online. You can find them in Macy's and large department stores like Nordstrom's and whatnot. You can find them on gray market websites. So for example, like Fragrance Net, Fragrance X, things like that. So you can get really good deals on designer fragrances. So they're a pretty good bargain, especially if you want to smell really good and without breaking the bank.
Like smelling fragrant on a budget.
Plus, you're not risking doing too many blind buys because you can go somewhere and sample it. Whereas with niche fragrances, they're more expensive, and we try not to do blind buys, but I'm guilty. You have to blind buy because sometimes Fragrantica just hit you with those notes. You're like, oh man, I'm gonna like that.
And she can never resist.
Yeah. So next, everyone, we're gonna talk about the price tags. Let's set them apart. Designer fragrances tend to be pretty moderately priced. I would say most people can afford designer fragrances. They range from around $70 to $100. It still is a bit expensive as far as a bit of investment, but it's nothing that's out of reach for people. It's something you can enjoy for a holiday gift or a birthday gift. I would say designer fragrances are in reach for most people. Whereas niche fragrances, they can range from about $150 to in the thousands. So you can get pretty expensive with niche fragrances, but I would say they're still pretty, you're able to afford them to some degree, but maybe you'll end up getting one niche fragrance where you can get 5 designer fragrances.
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
that's the thing, but it's worth it if you really enjoy what you're smelling.
A question I want to ask you is, quality wise, like why would the price point be so much higher for a niche fragrance versus like getting those 5 designer fragrances for the same price?
I would say they both have awesome quality. I would say maybe the difference between the price, reason why they have different prices is designer is more mass marketed. So sometimes maybe the fragrance or the scent molecules they're using for designer fragrances are maybe not as expensive as the ones they use for the niche fragrances, or maybe niche will have a mix of natural oils and essential oils used mixed with synthetics, which makes them more expensive too. Because I would say quality is there for both of them. I think they're both quality. It's just more so like designer fragrances, mass production, maybe not as expensive fragrance molecules because they need to mass produce, which makes sense. Whereas the niche fragrances, smaller fragrance houses, they can also use natural with synthetic. Also too, I would say niche houses tend to only focus on fragrance houses, whereas designer is they do clothing, they do jewelry, they do fashion jewelry,
the whole shebang.
Right. So maybe they can afford to kind of lower the price on theirs, but I also say that's probably why they may save on the fragrance molecules as well and not use as much naturals, because they're kind of, it's not about the fragrance only. It's like a fragrance to support their designs for the clothing you wear, what they want to exude for a woman or a man that's wearing their clothing, whereas neat fragrance houses are simply, that's the art, that's the craft, that's the perfumer exuding what they want to put into the fragrances. There's no other distraction. There's no clothing to match this to. It's all just perception and artistry.
Great explanation, because me myself, up until we started making this channel, for the most part throughout my life, I've been mostly designer. I've been a YSL guy. I've been Dolce & Gabbana guy.
And they smell good, you guys. Like those fragrances all smell wonderful.
Kenneth Cole, that was another one that I kind of and nothing.
So,
not going to wear.
I'll ask you, what sets what sets niche apart from designer? So you're a man, you wore a YSL, you wore Dolce & Gabbana. When you got that M. Michelob fragrance, we did that review the other day. When you got M. Michelob, what was the difference between that fragrance versus your designer fragrances?
Disclaimer, so this is not to bash or somehow diminish my designer fragrances at all. But once I got that M. Michelob Pure Extreme, it was head and shoulders above what I was used to with my designer fragrances. Simply because it was more concentrated, for one, with the Eau de Parfum, and two, it's, again, the scent was more nuanced, I would say. It had more depth to it. It had more of a softness to it. Not to undercut Dolce & Gabbana, my Chemical, my YSL, some of the other fragrances that I already own. You know, my beloved Curve that I had back in the day when I was a teenager coming up. But
that green bottle, that olive green bottle, I remember seeing that at some time. My brothers had it.
Still lovely fragrances. I'm not trying to downplay those at all, but they paled in comparison to the quality and the energy that M. Michelob gave to me.
I like what you said about energy, because you know sometimes it's not about just, it's what you smell and the joy it brings you. It's just like it does something to you, smelling certain scents over. For me, it does the same thing. Something about those niche fragrances, when those fragrance houses put out their fragrances and a perfumer, a nose goes ahead and they formulate these fragrances, it's just magical. And I would say you can't beat the packaging. I tell you,
man.
Yeah, a thing of beauty. I tell you, when you smell the beautiful fragrances and you see that beautiful packaging, the glass bottles, the embellishment, I tell you, like that niche fragrance experience of receiving that packaging and you get to unbox it, and they have elaborate packaging where it has little lights in there, or this beautiful treasure chest. I tell you, it's a great time. You really feel like you got a little treasure box.
And to me, I appreciate the artistry that much more because I'm able to connect the story with what inspired them to make the artistry at the same time.
Right,
too.
there's a story. It's a whole experience to it. It's like you know, let's say if this fragrance to me smells like the seaside, and then they organize the box so it looks like some kind of beautiful aquatic, you know, gold box like under the sea. You know, you can use your imagination. You just really could take yourself anywhere with fragrances. But you know, I hope everyone is enjoying this video. Please let us know, what do you think the differences are between niche and designer? We're not saying niche versus designer because we're not saying one's better than the other, but what do you think? I think it's great to have both in your collection. I sure do, but I won't lie to you. I have most niche now, but when I first started, I had 100% designer. So it's all about preference. So
real quick before we wrap up here. So what percentage of your collection would you say is niche, and then what percent is
tiny?
designer?
I think I have like over 100 fragrances. I think I have a total of 5 to 6 designer, and the rest are all niche at this time.
So, and then let's not forget, guys, she started out with the designer fragrances.
100%, yeah, everything. Yeah, and what happened was over time, as I used the bottles up, or if I had the bottle and I halfway used it, I ended up selling them, you know, online so someone else can enjoy them, just because I moved on to other fragrances I enjoyed. And how I discovered niche was actually from just going around fragrance sniffing. I would go to Saks Fifth Avenue, I would go to specialty stores in New York City, and you just get to experience it. And I was like, wow, these smell great. And it's just where it takes you, what it did for me emotionally, as far as just enjoying without smelling, it was just worth every penny for me. It still is.
And now that's rubbing off on me, guys. So again, we thank you for joining us again for another evening with us. If you guys are liking what we're doing, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. We love your comments, man. Keep them coming. But until next time, we will see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye, guys.